This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who, at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have a lot of news, and we have a lot of things that we're doing here at Freedom Watch, and I'm doing personally. But the thing that really came up this week that really struck me was the abandonment by the establishment Republicans and, of course, many conservatives of President Trump, given his press conference with President Putin of Russia in Helsinki. And what really, I think, messed it up even more was the fact that the president was right the first time about what he said in terms of not believing American intelligence. And I'm going to go through why you cannot believe the American intelligence community. Over the last 5 decades, they have lied to us. And the president's statement was reasonable, but he backed off of that. He was under a lot of pressure from Republicans, from conservatives, from the media, from everything else. And frankly, it's been a mess for the rest of the week. But he said something that was correct. And what he said was President Putin denied that he did this. Well, that doesn't mean anything one way or the other. People lie. But the reality is that shame on us for allowing there to be any interference in the elections, assuming there was any. We don't even know that. And we don't know it was Russia. And the president raised a very good point that I have raised and others have raised, that why didn't the FBI take custody of the servers of the Democratic National Committee to do a true and complete analysis if, in fact, the Russians are involved? And this is why what he said was absolutely accurate. The fact that the president was not trying to embarrass Vladimir Putin at the press conference, I mean, that just makes sense. You don't slam someone in front of the world after you've just met with them and you've had communications about what you're trying to accomplish in Syria and Iran, in North Korea, and throughout the world. But let me give you a little history of our intelligence community, which includes the FBI, by the way. Let's go all the way back to the beginning of the Kennedy administration, the Bay of Pigs, with an operation that was run by the CIA, where Cuban exiles from Miami were encouraged to land on the beaches of Castro's Cuba and to wage a revolution and to take the island over. That was a complete disaster by the CIA, who gave faulty intelligence to President Kennedy. They didn't back up the exiles. The exiles were massacred on the beach. I have a client, Jose Basulto, of Brothers to the Rescue, who was part of that CIA operation embedded inside of Cuba. He watched this massacre from a hill. So in my lifetime, and I was only about 9 years old at the time, this was my first experience, although I really didn't know what I was seeing at that time, with the CIA, with the NSA, with the FBI, with others who basically sold the country out and sold the Cuban exiles out on the beaches of Cuba. Then, of course, the CIA believed, and this has been widely reported, that Kennedy was soft on communism. And for whatever reason, during the Kennedy years and his assassination, ultimately, the CIA was implicated by many in the assassination of President Kennedy. In fact, it's believed that Lee Harvey Oswald was a double agent of the CIA. And to this day, we don't know whether the CIA was responsible in killing Kennedy. He may have even done that in conjunction with Lyndon Johnson, who many people also believe was behind it, who wanted to be president. You just don't know. And let's go forward after that, during the Johnson years. False information provided with regard to the North Vietnamese having waged 2 attacks at the Gulf of Tonkin, which was the pretext that Johnson used. I think Johnson perhaps ranks up there with Obama. Maybe he's even worse as one of the the worst presidents in American history. This got us into the Vietnam War in a major way. This was the pretext that was being used by the Johnson administration and furthered by faulty intelligence community statements and information that was provided that was used as a pretext. And getting into that war in a major way, which I don't think Kennedy would have done, frankly, cost us over 55,000 lives, hundreds of thousands of Americans maimed and permanently wounded. Fast forward to the Nixon Watergate years. Some of the Watergate burglars had ties to the CIA, undisputed. Obviously, they were involved in illegal deeds and misdoings. Then during the Carter administration, also bad intelligence with regard to the fall of the Shah and the taking over by the Ayatollah and these extreme Islamic movements inside of the Muslim religion of Iran, which has cost us dearly to this day. Another intelligence failure. The Reagan administration, faulty intelligence by the CIA and others with regard to the precarious state of the Russian economy, which if Reagan had had accurate intelligence, he would not have had to engage in such a large arms buildup and get into what potentially could have been a shooting war with the Soviet Union. We would have known that the Soviet Union was going to collapse under its own weight. And of course, then there came Iran-Contra and the involvement of the CIA in that, in supporting the Contras. I'm not saying that was bad, but this was deceptive for the American people. It actually led to the resignation of the CIA director, William Casey. Let's go into the years of Daddy Bush, H.W. Bush. Bad intelligence with regard to Saddam Hussein's plans to take over Kuwait. We had to get into a major war in Kuwait. Now, luckily, it came out okay. But at the time, this was a great risk to peace and security in the Middle East. The Clinton administration, Osama bin Laden, bad intelligence from the intelligence community with regard to his whereabouts, to the point where Clinton ordered the bombing. Of course, it was probably Wag the dog as well, of a pharmaceutical factory in the Sudan, which intelligence agencies said housed Osama bin Laden. Well, it didn't. We know that was false as well. Let me continue on because it only gets worse from here. George W. Bush, insufficient intelligence with regard to the attack at 9/11 of the World Trade Center, killing over 300,000 Americans, changing the whole state of the way we do things, not just in this country, but around the world. And of course, the faulty intelligence that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Moving into the Obama years, illegal surveillance, mass surveillance. I've got 2 preliminary injunctions at Freedom Watch against the Obama NSA for illegal mass surveillance without probable cause that a crime is being committed or that terrorism is afoot of hundreds of millions of Americans. That gave rise to the USA Freedom Act. And then we learned that the intelligence agencies and the FBI didn't even obey the USA Freedom Act. The courts vacated those preliminary injunctions based upon the fact that we had a new law, but they were violated. So our cases continue on. They're on appeal right now. Even a conservative judge, Richard Leon, who apparently got stuff on him with these intelligence agencies, bailed out of that case. So now we're up at the appellate level on those cases. And we know that President Trump, that he and his family and colleagues were wiretapped at the Trump Tower. We know that their communications overseas were unmasked by Samantha Powers and others. Susan Rice, who ironically now is on the board of directors of Netflix, if you can believe that. These people are not held accountable. They go into bigger and better things. Well, this was the intelligence agencies under Obama, where the director of national intelligence, James Clapper, who's still out there trying to destroy Trump, lied to Congress under oath that there was no illegal mass surveillance. And where John Brennan, that despicable creature, that broken individual of a human, former communist, someone who converted to Islam, who was head of the CIA under Obama. I mean, this is unimaginable. You couldn't even have something like this on Homeland, the TV series. Is this guy's out there calling the president a traitor. So this is the history of our intelligence communities. You know, they're no James Bond and they're no MI6. They've also engaged in assassinations over time with regard to the president of Chile, Salvador Allende and others. They are not representative of our democracy. They are not representative of the goals and the visions of our founding fathers. And what President Trump said was mild, that he couldn't believe what they said. And I still don't believe what they said. And even when Dan Coates comes forward, who's now part of the Trump team, they're covering for the deep state. This is not just Democrat establishment, it's Republican establishment. The intelligence community is more powerful than the President of the United States. You want to know why the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court may have flipped on Obamacare? What did the intelligence agencies and the FBI have on him under Obama? It caused them to flip at the last moment, virtually ruining our economy at the time. So this is what we face. And the president backing off of this and now saying, oh, he believes the intelligence agencies and this and that. No, he should have stood his ground. And I love this president. And I'm doing everything I can personally and at Freedom Watch to make sure that it's a successful presidency and that we get Robert Mueller, that criminal, off his back, and in fact prosecute Mueller with our citizens' grand juries and the Clintons and Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Obama, the rest of them. But the president needs to not flinch. And I was very pleased to see at the end of the week that he invited Putin to Washington. There's nothing wrong with that. We have to have communications. We have to be able to communicate and try to reach accommodations with the second or third biggest power in the world. China, of course, is in there. The president has done that. So all of this is just a smokescreen to destroy his presidency. And those that accuse the president of treason are themselves responsible for treason. So I want you to go to www.freedomwatchusa.org. freedomwatchusa.org. Join our cause. Join our Justice League. Our president has our government has broken away from us, and we cannot allow them to break away from the president. We, the people, need to stand up and support him. And that's why we have our citizens' grand juries that I've talked about in previous shows, and we're going to talk more today, because we, the people, need to bring these criminals to justice. I'll be right back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Dangerous.
You don't care. Use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I want to add one other further point with regard to the deceit of our intelligence agencies. And the point I was making is that you can't believe them any more than you can believe the Russians or the Chinese or anybody else. This needs to be done properly. But to give you an example of just how dishonest and corrupt they are, particularly the National Security Agency, they've had all of Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails throughout. And the FBI is just as corrupt as they are. They could have gotten those 33,000 emails because we know that the NSA has been gathering, and the CIA as well, because they work together, all internet communications worldwide, that they kept them for 5 years. Recently, they purged their files to get rid of the evidence in our lawsuits and otherwise. They're certainly not afraid of Congress. In fact, they've got the goods on Congress. But that's the point, is that President Trump told the truth, and we have to be realists in this country. We have a history now of 5 decades of the intelligence community and the FBI lying to the American people, and they're a force greater than even the president himself. I want to talk about what happened yesterday. I was in Las Vegas, Nevada. I was attending the sentencing of someone who took place in the successful standoff at Bunkerville, Todd Engel. The poor guy didn't do anything other than to post some internet postings on Facebook that sounded somewhat threatening. But when he actually got to the standoff, he played a role in trying to cool passions, not to allow any violence to occur. But if anybody harbored any notions that this whole Bundy matter is over, it certainly was dispelled in the courtroom of Judge Gloria Navarro yesterday, that absolute witch of a judge who, first of all, dismissed the Bundy prosecutions, the superseding indictments, not because it was the right thing to do, but basically to protect the government, because we had a whistleblower come forward by the name of Larry Wooten, who we asked to bring into court to testify. He found and actually testified in letters, but not under oath. We wanted him in court, that there were kill lists of the Bundys, They were being called retards, subhuman, that there was cover-up by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Las Vegas, Nevada, of all this criminal activity of the Bureau of Land Management and the FBI, who was also caught lying during trial, the FBI on several occasions. And Judge Navarro basically dismissed it because she was protecting her benefactor, Harry Reid, because the BLM was then being run by Neil Cornsey, who was the former chief of staff of Harry Reid, and they were largely responsible for this criminal activity. What was really telling yesterday is the prosecutors, there's supposed to be an ongoing investigation by the Justice Department of their prosecutorial misconduct. I'd actually brought complaints in that regard. We went to court in that regard. I was assured by Justice Department lawyers that there was an ongoing review of this prosecutorial misconduct to have them disciplined potentially. And also, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, around the time that a mistrial was declared by Navarro and subsequently a dismissal, said he was going to review it. Well, these prosecutors, Myra and Dan Sheets, were back in court, then acting U.S. attorney and his number one assistant. It was like nothing happened. They had no fear. They were there. They're not being held accountable. And they then proceeded not really to talk about Todd Engel and his sentencing as much as to trash Cliven Bundy and the family and again maintain their guilt. It was an absolutely disgraceful performance that was then backed up by Judge Navarro, who sentenced this poor guy to 168 months or about 14 years in prison, and he didn't do anything wrong. And this was the payback. See, she had to let the Bundys out because we had exposed so much that had gone wrong. But in fact, what the government did with regard to the Bundys was also true with everybody else. So all of these people who have been convicted or have pled out, and there weren't that many, frankly, before, should be, in fact, let free. But now this guy's going to be doing 14 years, a couple years for time served, so it'll probably be around 12. And there are others in there as well who have very, very long sentences, even longer than that. So the Bundy matter continues on. Watch what we do in the future. But the Justice Department, this corrupt cesspool of my former alma mater that has become such a negative force in our country, working against the American people, it marches on. And it's a story about our Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, who absolutely has no integrity. You know, he does some stuff with immigration, but that's about it. Everything else, he buries his head in the sand, or in fact, he's part of this. So we'll need your support for the Bundys. I want you to go to Cliven Bundy Defense Fund.org. Cliven Bundy Defense Fund. Contribute to that because we need to move forward. We need to take legal actions here. We already have legal actions to have the land declared by the people of Nevada to get the federal government off the Bundys and the other ranchers' backs. But we've got other things coming down the line, and we need your support. So go to Cliven Bundy Defense Fund.org. We'll be right back.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with my very good friend and my own hero, Bob Barr, who was congressman for Georgia during the impeachment proceedings of Bill Clinton. We worked together. We wanted to broaden it out to go way beyond Monica Lewinsky and to Chinagate, IRS-gate, and everything else. We've talked about that on previous shows. But as I've always said, and I keep saying it again, he's the only congressman I've ever met who I could trust, who actually put his money where his mouth is. And of course, this week we've seen some dog and pony shows up on Capitol Hill. It continues. We've seen it in the media. I mean, we see dog and pony shows on Fox News every night. I watch Fox News too, but frankly, at this point, I basically shut off Hannity in particular because he's selling false hope. Congress is not going to do the job. And we know that the American people need to rise up. That's why we have citizens grand juries that we're putting into effect beginning on September 26th in Dallas, Texas. And we'll talk about that more in the last segment. But I wanted to go back to this issue of the intelligence agencies. And Bob has an interesting take. He was with the CIA. for about 7 years. Of course, then he has a distinguished career as the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, as a congressman, and now in private practice, and he still does public interest work. But, Bob, give us your take on how the president handled that press conference. I've taken the position that he wasn't wrong. So it's more of a question in your mind of procedure rather than substance, from what I understand. And give us your take on how he could have done it differently.
Thank you, Larry. I probably would have advised him either not to do the news conference at all, or just issue a very sort of cryptic statement without going into details. I think the most serious mistake that the president made was telling the Russians, who are one of our two primary adversaries in the world, the other being China, the mistake Trump made was to tell the Russian that he, that is Trump, doesn't trust his own intelligence agencies. That is a serious mistake, because that telegraphs to, or more than telegraphs, it tells the Russians that whatever they do that might be reported to Trump by our own intelligence agencies, he's probably not going to believe. And that can be very, very serious. If Trump, in fact, does not trust the intelligence he's receiving, does not trust his intelligence agencies, then he has one course and only one course, and that is get rid of the people that he put in there or that he has failed to remove. But handling and dealing with intelligence, it can be very sensitive, and you've got to think several chess moves ahead, so to speak, and you have to put yourself in the mind of your adversary, not just bluster your way through something like dealing with a business transaction with another business person. So I think this is very serious.
I think the reason he did that, Bob, I mean, he should not trust the intelligence community, in my opinion. Okay, they've lied repeatedly to presidents, to the American people. They are not, as I said in the earlier segment, they're not James Bond and MI-16. Okay, unfortunately. The CIA, in my view, and the FBI and the NSA have not served the American people well. But you're right. You don't have to say that in public. But I think the president was forced into that by this very hostile media that he confronts on a daily basis, actually many times each day. And he gets reactive. And that's one of the things I like about him, is that he will push back and he'll fight. But yes, if he does it again, it should be done behind closed doors. And then he should address the American people on the problems in the intelligence community and the FBI and clean house. I agree with that. And when we come to cleaning house, it's not just Robert Mueller that needs to go. I mean, this guy's on a legal jihad, in my opinion. But this FBI director, Christopher Wray, I mean, he's way out of his league. He doesn't have the gravitas, in my opinion. He doesn't. This week he says that he has confidence in Mueller, that he leaked. Somebody leaked over there that he offered his resignation to Trump. He was distancing himself from the president while he's serving the president. And this was in reaction to what went on in Helsinki in that press conference. So the president's got these people around him. You talk about traitors. These people around him, I mean, it's like Caesar and Brutus and the Roman Senate. These people want to stab him in the back, and it's coming from the Republican establishment as well as from the Democrat establishment and from the media. So give us your thoughts on Christopher Wray. He spent time at King & Spalding at the law firm in Atlanta. I went to Emory University School of Law, by the way, so I know that firm very well. And I'm just not impressed with the guy, and I think it's time for him to go. I think he should have been fired.
One of the things that I'm very leery of, and we've seen this in local government here in the Atlanta area as well as in Washington, turmoil in government where you have people coming in and then being fired, or leaving or pressured to leave, such as Tom Price, such as Scott Pruitt, and so forth. It harms the entire process of governing that you're trying to implement, because whoever the president now puts into these positions will be seen as somebody or as a group of people who don't really have the confidence of the president. So the people under them, the bureaucrats, will just do what they want to do, thinking, well, there's going to be no repercussions because these people are going to be out in a while, or they're coming in, but they're worried about taking strong positions and so forth. So I'd be inclined to not remove the FBI director, give him some time. Trump put him in there, and I don't know Christopher Wray. I've met him certainly, and it does bother me that he has allowed some of the things to go on, but it takes some time to really get a handle on what's going on in there. And if the FBI were to concentrate on what they are trained to do and what their legitimate jurisdiction is, that is to investigate under the direction of the Department of Justice and the U.S. attorneys across the country, to investigate serious, truly federal offenses, and if Chris Wray is moving them to get back to doing that, then more power to them. That's what they need to be doing. And I'd prefer to wait a little while and see if that is being done to get the FBI back to its real mission and out of all of this other nonsense, such as the Mueller probe, to get rid of people like this guy Strzok and the others that are infecting the FBI.
Bob, you're aware of the Bundy case. You've consulted with me. You actually met with Cliven Bundy a few times in an informal capacity. He has great respect for you. The family has great respect for you. But I was in court yesterday, and what I saw confirmed the fact that the Justice Department has become the Department of Injustice. It's broken away from the American people. I walk in, and I see the former acting U.S. Attorney Myray and his number one deputy, she's sitting there getting ready to make an argument as to why this individual, Todd Engel, one of the few who was convicted of a few counts in all of these Bundy trials, should do 20 years in prison. He's already 51, okay? And they sat there like nothing had ever happened with regard to the prosecutorial misconduct in their office, with the Bureau of Land Management in terms of government misconduct generally, and, of course, the FBI that lied on the witness stand, which even forced this very pro-Obama Harry Reid judge to dismiss the indictments of Cliven himself. And they sat there without any care. And what's supposed to be going on now, Bob, as you know, is there's supposed to be an internal investigation of their conduct, which Attorney General Jeff Sessions said he was going to order when this case was dismissed months ago. So it's clear that nothing's happened. I was actually given assurances that it's going on because I have a court case that's up on appeal right now trying to force an investigation. The Justice Department lawyer who's representing the department told me, Larry, there is an internal investigation. But these people come forward. They didn't have a care in the world, and they weren't interested in Todd Engel. They wanted to get as many years as they could to try to justify their previous defeats in a number of different aspects of these cases. But Todd Engel wound up with 14 years, and the person that was really trashed during this sentencing were the Bundys. It was as if they were trying the Bundys. So this is an example. You know, the FBI was involved in this. Where's Christopher Wray, the FBI director? Where is the Attorney General? Well, forget about Rod Rosenstein. He's totally corrupt. But this is the government has broken away from the people, and the justice system is non-existent, in my opinion. And that's why we do need these citizens' grand juries. But, you know, I want to get your take on this too, Bob. It was an unbelievable display. I'm going to fill you in more later.
You put your finger on something that's bothered me for a long time, Larry, and that is the execution of power for power's sake by the U.S. Department of Justice. Gone are the days, apparently, when government power was tempered by a sense of true justice and compassion. That is playing absolutely no role in the case against the Bundys and their associates. And what you just described is unfortunately all too familiar to a lot of us who follow these types of federal cases. And it's also why it's so important to file lawsuits against the Department of Justice when we see these injustices occurring, because the bureaucracy itself, unfortunately, cannot be relied upon to handle the matters internally. It's also why it's very important to make sure that the president, in this case President Trump, is made aware of these injustices. So hopefully he can step in, as he has done in a couple of cases already. Sheriff Joe Arpaio in Arizona, I forget which one of the Bundy sons up in Oregon.
The Hammonds. This was another ranching family that they came to the aid of. Yes, the president did that. He went around the Justice Department and give him tremendous credit for pardoning the Hammonds. This was a gross injustice. So, yes, you're right.
And that is the result of pressure, not so much pressure, but awareness being brought to the attention of the White House and the president through media, through work such as you're doing, and other people, to make sure that the president is aware of this, because it does not seem to be coming at all from the place where it ought to be coming from, and that is the Attorney General in the Department of Justice. They don't seem to care that justice be done. They simply care that power be wielded.
Well, one thing's for sure, it was clear to me that they're not finished with Clive and Bundy and the family. And, they are going to do whatever they want to do, because these prosecutors sat there and they covered up the prosecutorial misconduct, according to this whistleblower, Larry Wooten, and they didn't have a care in the world. It was like Hillary Clinton. We know we can't be touched. So you're right, Bob. This is why you need to fight back, and you can't turn the other cheek. And we got to keep punching, because we don't have a government that represents the American people anymore, in my opinion. This is the reason, and you were on and you talked about it earlier, that we're doing these citizens' grand juries. We're going to impanel grand juries from voter rolls neutrally. We're going to indict. We're going to try. We'll get a retired judge to do that. We'll sentence, and we'll seek to mete out justice peacefully and legally with citizens' arrests. But we have no choice.
And I think there also needs to be political pressure brought to bear, as well as civil lawsuits. I think that is another tool in the arsenal that the citizens have to see that justice is finally done in cases like this.
And you pray you get a judge that isn't an Obama or Clinton appointee that'll throw the case out, and they still, in large extent, infest the federal judiciary. It's just beyond belief. Anyway, Bob, I want to thank you. We'll have you on again. You're always a great source of not just courage, but wisdom. And you had a radio show at on Radio America once yourself. What was that called?
Bob Barr's Laws of the Universe. Cannot do it, in my small way, through our group, Liberty Guard, as well, out there fighting for the same things that you are, and that is simple, fundamental justice.
We're partners. God bless.
Thanks, Larry.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
This is the verdict segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. What's the verdict here? The verdict here is that the president's not a traitor. The verdict is that the intelligence community and the FBI have been traitors and continue to be traitors to the American people. Bob Barr made a good suggestion on how the president can handle this in the future. But the reality is the president did not need to be destroyed this week by the left-wing media. And he was even destroyed by Fox News, if you can believe that. I mean, this really unmasked what Fox News is. They've got a couple good commentators on there, Judge Napolitano, Jeanine Pirro, a couple others. But basically what they sell is hype. And they're giving the American people this impression that something's happening in Congress, that something's happening in the courts, that something's happening here and there. And it's not. And the reason they do that is for ratings. The reason that they don't say it straight up is because of advertisers. Advertisers sometimes have left shows like Hannity and Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson and that kind of thing. And it's good to watch it, but, I go on Newsmax a lot and I can say what I want, but I can never talk about something like citizens' grand juries on Fox because Fox is controlled by leftists in reality. The Murdoch family, the sons that are in control, they're on the left right now. So there is censorship. And I was really disgusted to see them go after the president this week. It was like they had to run for the exits to save themselves with the ownership of Fox. So I want to then flip to this concept here is that we cannot depend on even some conservative media like Fox. We can't depend on our government. There is no government now to bring back the rule of law to this country and to restore an equal system of justice. And that's why we need citizens' grand juries. And that's why Justice Scalia back in 1992, as I've said in a case, United States versus Williams, the grand jury belongs to the American people. It doesn't belong to the three branches of government. We have the right to enforce the laws of this nation and the laws of God ourselves. And we will do that. And there is no alternative right now. You have an individual highly corrupt by the name of Robert Mueller who's doing the bidding of the left and the Republican and Democrat establishments to destroy the president. You've got an attorney general who puts his head in the sand, who's worse than a zero. He's an absolute disgrace, Jeff Sessions. You've got an FBI director who looks like a child. I mean, he's protecting himself. He has confidence in Mueller after all that's going on, and he leaks that he was going to resign after the president gave his press conference in Russia. Well, he should be fired or removed. You've got people in Capitol Hill like Gowdy who aren't in favor of impeaching Rod Rosenstein. He plays out of both sides of his mouth. He's very impressive, in his presentation, but in terms of actions, he bailed out of the Benghazi investigation. He didn't even show up for the hearing of the fallen victims at Extortion 17 when we had that years ago. And he's also praised Mueller as a man of integrity. So we cannot look to the government to do it for us. It's all part of this giant club in Washington. When I ran for the U.S. Senate back in 2003 and 2004, I said, I don't want to be a member of the club. I want to take a club to the U.S. Senate. Well, we need to take a club to the entire government. It's not our government. It's their government. It's for them. It's not for the American people. So beginning on September 25th in Dallas, Texas, we're going to be commissioning grand juries. We're going to be indicting Hillary Clinton. We're going to be indicting Robert Mueller. We're going to be indicting Rod Rosenstein. We're going to be indicting James Comey, John Brennan, the despicable former head of the CIA under Obama, James Clapper, who lied under oath. So did Brennan to Congress about illegal mass surveillance of the American people. We are going to be holding these people accountable, and we will bring about justice. And when the people see that we're doing this the, quote, right way, neutrally, we're not going to cook the results. There's so much evidence out there. We don't need any more evidence. We just need action right now. Then the people will rise up, and these people will have to submit to even be incarcerated. That's my view, because to do otherwise would be unconscionable and also, frankly, against the great weight of what the American people can accomplish on their own. We had a revolution in 1776. We didn't use citizens' grand juries. We're doing this peacefully and legally. We used other means. I don't want to see those other means go into effect. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. Contribute to our cause. Join our Justice League. Participate in our citizens' grand juries. We'll be back next week with another hard-hitting edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.